Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp, and today I'm going to be talking about the law of attraction. I've spoken a lot about magic before, so I haven't really felt the need to talk about the law of attraction because a lot of the underlying principles are the same or similar, but the law of attraction is a topic which deserves exploration in its own right. So today I'm going to be looking at some of the origins of what is known today as the law of attraction, and my thoughts on some of the basic principles behind this idea. So where has this idea of the law of attraction come from? It's very popular today in alternative spiritual circles. Often it's also referred to these days as manifesting or manifestation. But this idea of the law of attraction was really popularized in the 2000s with the release of Rhonda Byrne's documentary The Secret, and where it was referred to as simply the law of attraction or The Secret. But of course, in The Secret, we are told that the true origin of the law of attraction stretches far back into the mists of time and has since been suppressed and known by all but a select few. And you get a few flashes of what some of these inspirations might be. It's very clear that there are some influences on the modern idea of the law of attraction that are very ancient indeed, and indeed seem to be rooted in the Western esoteric tradition and in the idea of magic. So the very first thing that pops up on the screen when there's the montage of The Secret down through the ages is unmistakably the Emerald Tablet. This was a Hermetic text which dates back at least to medieval or classical Greek times, and it purports to be much older. It purports to be ancient Egyptian wisdom which has been passed down to the ancient Greeks, given by the personage of Thoth Hermes Trismegistus. Thoth, of course, being the Egyptian god of magic and writing, and many other things, knowledge, many other things. But the core tenet of the Emerald Tablet is as above, so below. You've probably heard this everywhere if you've been around spiritual circles for a while. Basically, what it means is that in a broader sense, in a broader metaphysical sense, the human being is the reflection of the universe. We are the microcosm of the macrocosm. We're kind of like a hologram of the universe. And in some sense, we're sympathetically connected so that what happens in the universe will happen to us and vice versa. And so this is the foundation of theurgy for the ancient Hermeticists who came out of following this Emerald Tablet of Thoth as a tradition. And it's the basis of what is today called magic, and indeed of the law of attraction. And the way that it has been rephrased in The Secret is that thoughts become things. So what you think in your internal world will ultimately influence what happens in the external world. The other big influence on the development of this law of attraction in modern times is also self-help. And there seems to be quite a bit of influence from the New Thought movement. As one of the titles that flashes up on the screen during the introduction is The Life Power and How to Use It by Elizabeth Town. So we've got this blend of kind of New Age spirituality, ancient knowledge about magic, and modern self-help to produce the law of attraction and the theory of its use. So the central tenet, as I've said, of the law of attraction is that thoughts become things. So thoughts becoming things is not a particularly controversial statement. I mean, that's kind of how being a conscious sentient being works. For example, I could have a thought that I really want to pick up this book that's on the table in front of me. And what will happen is my brain will send a signal to the nerves in my hand to pick it up, and I will. And I will have the book in my hand. So you could say that that is an example of using thought to change reality. But of course, what the law of attraction is talking about is a more direct way of using thought and intention to change reality. So, say I really want to read this book, The Anatomy of the Body of God, and I can't find it anywhere, and I really want it. Using the law of attraction, I will put the intent out there that I really want to find it, and then mysteriously, perhaps somebody will get it for me as a Christmas present or something, a birthday present, not knowing that I want it and just thinking it's something I might like. That's an example of how the law of attraction might work, as opposed to using will or intent in the usual way that we use it. And the central thesis of The Secret is, in a deeper sense, the explanation of the law of attraction is that whatever you think in your mind is what will be attracted to you. So if you have really positive thoughts about something and you're positively affirming that your reality is a certain way, then you will attract situations that reflect how you're thinking about reality. But if you think about something negative, you will attract the situation you're trying to avoid. So whether you're thinking about it positively or negatively, whatever situation you're fixating on is what will be attracted into your life. And this is the basis of being able to mysteriously attract things as you need them by just focusing on what you want. So, what do I think about this idea? As somebody who's practiced a lot of magic and benefited my life as a result, you can probably already guess that I think that this is definitely real. But you don't need to be a magician to think that the law of attraction has any merit, because although there are a few kind of claims that could be seen as based in something supernatural or some alternative view of what we know about the laws of physics, such as there was one comment by a guy, one of the presenters, talking about quantum physics. There's some interesting claims about the power of positive thought and intent to heal physical sickness, but most of the justification for the law of attraction doesn't require any kind of unusual explanation. It's just psychology. And so I'm always very surprised when I hear, atheists and the like talking about how the law of attraction is based in pseudoscience, especially since these same atheists will use the argument again and again of selection bias to try and disprove anything they don't want to be real. But selection bias is kind of related to the law of attraction, and ironically enough. So it's almost like they just don't want it to be true because of their own programming and their own biases. But let's look at some of the kinds of ways that our minds work that are behind the law of attraction. Okay, so it is true that what you focus on in life is what you will tend to attract in life. If you have a really negative mindset, negative view of yourself, that will affect the relationships in your life, the kinds of relationships that you attract into your life, and it will affect your ability to succeed. And conversely, if you have a positive mindset, then you'll be much more likely to succeed. So a simple example of this is confidence. It's really remarkable what a difference to your life having confidence can make. If you think about trying to get into a club or a party, perhaps one that you're not invited to, it makes a big difference if you walk up to the entrance to that venue confidently as though you belong there versus feeling shifty or feeling like you're doing something wrong as to how you're received. It makes a big difference in terms of if you're somebody offering a professional service with clients, if you don't have confidence, you're much less likely to be taken seriously. In dating, although from what I've heard, the dating scene is just abysmal in this day and age. But in theory, if you've got two partners who don't have unreasonable expectations of each other and are really there for the right reasons, and you're on a date, then confidence should make a difference in being positively perceived by the other person. And if you go into a job interview, confidence again makes a big difference. So this is just one example of how our mindset can have a big impact on our lives. At first we have a belief about the way that we are, the way that our reality is, and then other people feed that belief back to us. We unconsciously convince them of the same, and then our belief about how the future will turn out becomes the reality, because it was so convincing, because we made it convincing. You could say that that's an example of the law of attraction. It goes a bit deeper than that, but I'm trying to demonstrate this layer of it. And this is the influence of the self-help side of things on this idea of the law of attraction, because you read about this sort of stuff all the time in self-help books. A more negative example might be if you have, say, a classroom or a workplace. Now, imagine you have a person in that environment who's really intelligent, but everybody, because of some disagreement or some misunderstanding, everybody in that group starts treating the other person like they're useless, like they're a failure. That person, no matter their actual level of competence, will start to behave foolishly and start to behave like a failure, just because that is how people expect them to behave. And so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So this is another example of how your internal state will influence the way the external world takes shape around you and external situations take shape around you. In this example, the person has allowed the thoughts and beliefs of others to influence their own thoughts and beliefs about themselves. And that is where the error began, and then that leads to the rest of the unpleasant situation. And a basic understanding of the human mind will also tell us that if you give somebody a negative, then they will think about the thing that you're trying to negate with the statement. It's the way that we process human language. It's the way that the unconscious mind processes things. So if I say, don't think of a cat, immediately what do you think of? A cat. And as I said that, my cat jumped into here and is now trying to jump around. That's okay. So there's an example of the law of attraction. I was trying to not think of a cat, and I thought of a cat, and a cat appeared. But the subconscious mind doesn't process the negative. It only processes the positive. So if you say the negative of a thing, you will think of the thing. And so if you're thinking about how you don't want a certain situation in your life to come about, you will attract that situation in your life. It's better to just not think about it at all than think about how you don't want it to happen. But it's not just psychology. I mean, there is a spook factor in the way that the law of attraction is presented, where you can't just explain it in terms of your relationships with people changing because of your attitudes and beliefs. Some of the situations that are described in some of the anecdotes definitely have a supernatural flavour to them. I'm not going to discuss that too much because I've talked about that side of things a lot in my videos on magic, and particularly in one video on why magic works. So I don't want to repeat myself in that way, but go check that video out if you're interested in finding out if I think that there is some kind of a supernatural way that our thoughts and our intention can influence reality. But what I will say is that we certainly underestimate the degree to which our perceptions create the reality around us. If you read Buddhist texts, or if you even read David Hume or Immanuel Kant's metaphysical works on how everything is a matter of perception, you really start to realize every little detail of the universe that we inhabit is because of our perception. There is nothing that we can perceive objectively. Every single thing comes from our subjective awareness. That's not to say that we project reality into the universe like a projector projects an image onto a projector screen, but we have so many filters on that it's just impossible to decouple perception from reality. So we have no idea the influence of our thoughts can have on the way that our reality appears to us. For that very reason, we have no idea the degree to which we're able to hack our perceived reality with our mind and our intention, because it's nothing more than a perception. So there's a lot of similarities between the theory of magic and how the law of attraction works. One thing I will say for the law of attraction, one factor that it picks up on, which I think sometimes gets missed in the way that magic is spoken about, is the fact that this manifesting of your reality through your thoughts and your intention is always happening. It doesn't have an off switch. You contrast this with the way that a ceremonial magician will approach magic. They will set aside a time and a place to do a particular magical working, and if they're really hardcore and they believe that each planetary intelligence, for example, needs to be invoked at a particular time on a particular day, then they will be very particular in the timing that they set aside for their ritual. And they'll have a dedicated space to do the magical ritual in, the magical working, and they will enter the space at the appointed time, and they will do all of their banishings, and then they will, in that magical space that they have created, they will focus their intent and say, now, in this space, in this consecrated space, my intention and my thought will influence reality. And they'll do what they need to do, and then once they're finished, they go back out into the so-called mundane world, where everything just operates as normal. So it's almost as though the ritual chamber that they've set apart for their magical work is the only place where their thoughts can influence reality. And perhaps that's true to an extent, in that in the practice their intent and their thoughts are more focused than they usually would be. But that process doesn't stop just because their magical work stops. In fact, we're always manifesting our reality, for better or for worse. And this is why the work on oneself is so important, because we have so many narratives that we tell ourselves and so many negative mindsets that are kind of embedded in our ego, our personality based on the ego, that it's decades worth of work just getting rid of them all and overcoming them all. But each one of those is a thought that is manifesting our reality. So it really is the path to enlightenment, to be able to understand this fully enough to be able to master all of our thoughts and all of our intentions one day, so that we can fully be the creators of our own universe. Okay, so there are a couple of reasons why this idea of the law of attraction, of being able to manifest things, cops some flack, some criticism, besides the pseudoscience claim, which I've already demonstrated is motivated more by ideology than by actual science. But two more criticisms that are often leveled against the law of attraction is, number one, it ignores structural problems and structural disadvantages by just saying all you need to do to get what you want is have the right mindset. The other criticism is that there's this big emphasis in The Secret on thinking good thoughts rather than bad thoughts. In contemporary times, similar kind of language gets used to promote what's often described as toxic positivity, so some people can make that association as well. On this issue of toxic positivity, I'll address that first. So if you don't know what toxic positivity is and you're moving in spiritual circles, it's pretty much inevitable that you will come across an example of it sooner rather than later because it's everywhere. Basically, the idea behind toxic positivity is that everybody should think happy thoughts at all times, and anything that's wrong in your life, you just need to think positive and stop thinking negative thoughts. And if you're thinking negative thoughts, it's your fault because you could be thinking positive thoughts and you're not, and you should be thinking positive thoughts because people should only ever think positive thoughts. That's basically the crux of it. And toxic positivity is wrong because, first of all, we do have negative thoughts, and telling people that they can't have negative thoughts just leads to emotional repression, which is a terrible, terrible idea, and always leads to an explosion of the repressed emotion later on. It also is bad because it trivializes the negative situations that a person faces in their life, often in a context where the person is feeling very vulnerable and they're opening up to someone they feel they can trust with that vulnerability, only to have it thrown back in their face. Toxic positivity is wrong because it blames a person who is not culpable for something bad happening to them for the way that for the bad thing that's happening to them. Because they feel the feeling, and it's the feeling that's really making them feel bad, they're wholly responsible for their situation. It's a form of gaslighting. It's really terrible to put undeserved blame on people for their situation. So that's what toxic positivity is, and those are the reasons why it's bad. So is that what people are doing when they're talking about you just need to manifest things by only thinking about good things? Well, you could certainly use that kind of idea in a very cruel way, which reinforces toxic positivity, by just saying that everybody should do that. Everybody should just change their way of thinking, because most people can't do that. If you're crying about something because you're upset, you can't just decide to stop crying. Unless you're a sociopath, you probably don't have that level of disconnect from your emotions and that level of control over your emotions. But it is possible to develop the skill of actually gaining enough control over your emotions to be able to switch off an emotional state and switch on another one. So, for example, if you're feeling angry, you can just push the anger aside and redirect that energy towards a more positive emotional state. You can switch gears by really evoking happy thoughts or memories which manage to dispel the darkness of whatever negative thoughts you're happening to have at the time. And at the most basic level, you can use pranayama, you can use breath work to relax yourself by physiologically changing your body to convince your mind that you're relaxed when before you were stressed. So there's different kinds of ways that we can hack the biochemical laboratory that is our body to change our emotions. But it takes a lot of practice to do that and a lot of years of discipline. I haven't even mastered that yet. It's harder to master than meditation. So we need to just have compassion on people and not expect them to be able to change their emotions so easily. But it's useful to know that that is something that we can aspire towards. but we need to just let that happen in its own good time. It's no good trying to deform yourself emotionally or repress emotions. Just let it happen. Let it be a gradual development. And then one day you'll find that you are the master of your emotions. But the basic tenets of Stoicism also go a long way in this. Being able to create that kind of separation between yourself and your emotions, so you're not immediately pulled along like a bull with a ring in its nose by the first emotion that happens to come along. So what about this idea of structural disadvantage, and that being a more important factor in people succeeding or not than the law of attraction? Certainly, if I was the beneficiary of a multi-million-dollar trust fund, I'd have a lot more resources. It probably wouldn't take me as long to establish this channel and be able to get a big following, because I could pay my way to a lot of those milestones. Whereas I need to just build this thing from the ground up, from nothing. It's going to take a lot longer. But there's more extreme examples than that. So it would be naive to say that material circumstances don't play a role. Obviously, if you've got somebody who desires a multi-million-dollar home, if they come from wealth already, then they've got a much greater chance, and they already have the resources at their disposal to buy that house, than say somebody who lives in slum-like conditions. But here's the thing. The material conditions are not an absolute barrier. It may be easier for the person with more resources, but mindset ultimately can become more important than material conditions. Unless the goal is something completely unattainable, like wanting to be a pink unicorn. So even the individual who starts off in a slum could end up in a multi-million-dollar home with the right kind of plan and perseverance and grit and determination. That's not to say that they should have to be completely self-reliant and not get any help from society, but you know, if they can't get that, then they have other means at their disposal. To rise to a situation where they can afford that multi-million-dollar home. Now, granted, it's probably going to involve creating some kind of criminal enterprise, which of course I don't condone, but it still demonstrates that it is possible to achieve really amazing things. You know, we can often be too materialistic. We often think that the structures around us seem so impenetrable that it's just impossible for us to overcome them. But we really don't give credit to the power of human creativity and the power of human willpower, just raw will, when we say things like that, because you know, the human will is an incredible force, as is human ingenuity and creativity. And you know, you can have all of the resources in the world at your disposal, and if you're useless and you have no will, or you're weak-willed, or you have no creativity, or no real sense of purpose or motivation to succeed, or no ability that you've cultivated by learning skills, then you can end up in a situation where you lose all of your resources through a bad investment, through gambling, through spending money on other vices, and never trying to accomplish anything, and taking for granted that you will always have things because you've never had to learn to work for anything in life. So mindset is not everything, but I would say that it's even more important than how many resources you have. I suppose the thing is, whatever goal someone has in mind, they can't always know the way that they're going to achieve that beforehand. This is something that The Secret itself talks about. You need to sort of just let the universe reveal the means to you and just have the goal in mind. And the longer you pursue a goal, and the more different ways you try and experiment with to more immediately achieve that goal, and the more you try and do the same thing that works, to get closer and closer towards that goal, the lower the probability is that you will fail, and the higher the probability is that you will succeed. And if you're able to do that over an indefinite amount of time, then success is inevitable. Of course, we don't have an indefinite amount of time, so that's why it's so important to make the most of the time that we have. So that's my video on the law of attraction. If you've enjoyed this topic, I will do more videos on the law of attraction, because I've only just scratched the surface here. There's much more that I could talk about. But let me know, and just in general, leave your comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel to support my work, and also go and become my follower on Odyssey to support me on that platform as well. But thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.